In this video, I will tell you about 3 scary, mystical stories that, according to their authors, are based on real events that happened in the woods. If this video gets enough views and your feedback in the form of comments and thumbs up, I will make another similar video. This happened about 2 years ago, in the spring, when it got warmer. Fed up with sitting in the parking lot and drinking beer, we decided to get together and go somewhere. We thought about the place for a long time, about 2 weeks, and finally we decided. A suggestion was made to go to Litcarino, to the Bride Glade, a rather famous place. People in its vicinity are often beaten to death by a car, but then it is not so heavily rumored, so we had no thoughts of fear. Here came the long-awaited day. We went about 2 in the afternoon. Of course, we were not at all happy with the road. The monuments on it stand almost every 10 meters, and there are signs emergency road. We turned off the highway, found a nice clearing right in the middle of the forest, spread out. The rest was going more or less normally, guitar, alcohol, fun. When it got dark, we didn't care anymore, we were having fun. We didn't even notice how the fog enveloped us, and we went for a walk to the Bride's Glade. This is where we got a little creepy. The night, the fog, and in the middle of it all, as we walked out into the glade, we noticed a strange fact. The bottles that the honeymooners were hanging up were ringing in a way that made your ears pop. You look at them, they're not even moving, and there's no wind. Having had our fill of fright, we decided to quickly go back to the others who had stayed near the stuff. But, once again, it was not that simple. It was dark and the fog was thick. As we began to look around, we saw strange silhouettes of people at the far end of the clearing, who were long and stubbornly ignoring us, even though we were being very noisy. When we got a little closer to them, they just turned around and walked away into the woods, completely ignoring us. Taking a long time to figure out where we were going, we noticed a faint glow in the place where the strange company was standing. It was strange, not because it ignored us, but because 4 people could be seen through the fog. One was clearly a girl, all in white, 2 silhouettes in dark suits, and one, probably also a girl. She appeared to us to be wearing a red evening gown. That scared us the most. They looked like a young couple having a wedding, but looking at the time, they clearly shouldn't be there. Having calmed down a bit, we decided that wherever we were going, it didn't matter. The main thing, away from the clearing. We went in the opposite direction from the place where this strange company was standing. And after a while, we were walking down the damn road we were on. There, we figured out pretty quickly where we'd left the others. Finding the rest of the company, we sat down like water down. Surprisingly and creepily, almost the same story happened to them, except they were sitting still. We didn't drink anymore. We sat quietly and silently around the fire until morning, huddled together. In the morning we quickly packed our bags, but before we did, we remembered the mysterious company and the glow we had seen after they had left. As half of the company gathered, we headed for the clearing. There was a stump in that spot. On it were 2 candles, a bottle of expensive champagne, and under the champagne was a note which read, "Do not repeat your mistakes, nor those of others." After that we quickly packed up and left there. We had had enough. But there was something else creepy. After that, within a week, all 11 people who were there had all been in accidents. And most of them were in serious accidents, even those who didn't even own a car. Of course, our mutual friend Artem, who was also there, crashed to his death along with the cab driver who was driving him. At his funeral, they wouldn't even open the coffin. I would never advise you to go to Litcarino at night to the Bride's Glade. It was a year ago, in August. I drove my truck around the Transbaikal territory. This time it was the village of Bulade. I took a friend, 3 years younger than me, who was 17 at the time. He had relatives in Bulade, so while we were unloading, he was going to see them. But then the unexpected happened. The car had a torn timing chain and, of course, in the district center of suitable spare parts were not found. Therefore, we were stuck in the village for 3 days waiting for the necessary spare part to arrive. There was nothing to do. The whole village is at a wedding, the third day celebrating, and Slava and I decided to go around the neighborhood, including wandering through the woods. They say there were a lot of abandoned. Walking through the woods, now and then we come across the remains of the foundations of abandoned houses. It is a pity we didn't take anyone from the locals who could tell us about these places. By the way, the locals, for some reason, try not to go to the forest at all. There used to be many settlements here. Some disappeared after the Civil War at the beginning of the last century, others in the middle. Some are better preserved and some are worse. The ruins of some object were found in the middle of the forest. Most likely, it was a former labor camp. Even preserved what was once a perimeter of barbed wire, skewed, wooden tower, and other things. Exploring the ruins, somewhere in the distance we heard yelling. At a glance with a friend, we decided to help an unknown man. However, no matter how much we walked, the screaming felt like it kept changing direction. And when we decided to catch our breath, we found that, apparently, we wandered into the dead wood, as the locals call it. Personally, me and Slavka heard a lot about it, but had no idea what it is. We were horrified by this indescribable landscape. The trees do not seem to be dead and undead, the foliage is perpetually yellow, that is, they do not fade and do not bloom. Not a single bird can be heard, to no sound. An oppressive silence. It is very difficult to describe in words. The air is very heavy, and the taste of some metal on my teeth. There is absolutely no sense of time, and I feel sleepy. The eardrums in my ears were ringing, ready to burst from absolutely foreign sound. Some incomprehensible scream came as if from nowhere, and all the time was distant, then approaching. We thought we were just hallucinating. I squeezed my eyes shut and shook my head, but it didn't go away. Plus, my nose was bleeding. And words took me by the elbow, and we walked back. We sort of walked past the ruins of the old chapel because we felt bad at that moment. We felt it physically and could hardly stand on our feet. Already when we came to the village, told the old men where we went, including the dead wood. So we were immediately sent to a bathhouse, washed off heavy particles and forced to drink directly, like Chernobyl victims. As it turned out, there really was some village in those places first, which the Semyonovs burned down during the Civil War. In Stalin's time there was a health center with radon springs, and in Khrushchev time a repository for radioactive wastes. Naturally, we were totally unprepared for a trip to such a place, having no respirators or gas masks or anything else. A little later we decided to be better prepared and go to that place again, but with dosimeters. As it turned out, the radiation background in these places exceeds the norm by 300 times, and no exclusion zone existed there. It was just a dead forest, as the locals call it. And all sorts of voices are said to be heard because of the oppressive silence. Maybe so. I live in the small town of Krasnokamensk in the Transbaikal territory. We have a group of hiking enthusiasts who are interested in local history, local legends, and tales. One day we learned that there is a mystical place not far from the city's Belaya Polyana. It is constantly struck by lightning, hence the name. And besides, those who decide to spend the night on it are cured of ailments. Different people gave us coordinates of Belaya Polyana, but we could not find it. One day a newcomer appeared in our company and told us the following story. His father, a geologist by profession, went to the nature to have a rest with friends and decided to walk alone. He got tired after a while and sat down on a favorite white stone in a very comfortable clearing. Then he suddenly noticed that he did not recognize the area. At first he was surprised, then worried, as if he had gone quite far away from his friends. But he could not determine where their camp was now. Suddenly he heard the clatter of hooves and saw several riders. When the men drove up, the geologist saw that they were dressed rather strangely. "And where is Odental here?" "There is no such village," replied the geologist. "How not?" "There must be a village behind that Sapka, I think. But it has a different name." The riders looked at each other puzzledly, whispered among themselves, and rode away. And then the geologist suddenly realized that he recognized the area again. The geologist's son asked us not to tell much about it to anyone, even he had doubts about his father's veracity. But here's what happened next. After 7 years, this story was continued. Our company of mushroom hunters gathered, booked a car with an overnight stay, and went approximately to the place where a geologist had once lost his way. It was the end of summer, a weekend. The company was close-knit. The driver, however, did not fit into our company. We invited him to the common table. Does not fit. Well, the hell with it. If he does not want to, do not. No one and did not notice how he disappeared somewhere. We only noticed him when he jumped out of the bushes, all disheveled, overexcited, and a little crazy. He ran up to us and started to talk confused. As it turned out, the driver decided to go to the bushes, walked along the first path, and moved, as he thought, not far away. He saw a clearing, which seemed to him very cozy, and sat down on an absolutely white stone. And suddenly our driver realized that the area around him had changed. He was sitting near an extinguished campfire and had no idea which way he was coming from and where to go back. He couldn't see the path. His head suddenly became heavy, but all his senses sharply intensified so that he hears the ants rustling in the anthill. He sees the feathers of a hawk circling high in the sky. And wherever he looks, his vision adjusts like binoculars, and if he wants, he can see everything in the smallest detail. The driver was so frightened by what was happening that he jumped up and ran in panic wherever he could see. Then he jumped out onto a familiar clearing, saw his car and us. After a while he came to his senses and told us what had happened to him. The driver said he could not stay overnight because he was afraid. He came to pick us up tomorrow, but he wouldn't even get out of the car to help us stow our gear. It was obvious that he was still not in his right mind. And no matter how much we combed the area around us and looked for a wonderful white clearing, we never found anything. Friends, if you are interested in interesting crime stories, their investigations, I advise you to go to my new channel Wizner Crime. The link to the channel is in the upper right corner and in the description to this video.